Is meteorologist Ted Keller with today's severe thunderstorm outlook. And by today, I mean today's and for the next several days. And we still have some areas worth talking about. Not so much today. We have just kind of a smattering of mild severe weather threats, as you can see on the map here, with the basically lowest level that the Storm Prediction Center talks about in 4 different places: the Deep South, parts of Kansas, up around Minneapolis, and also out in Nevada, of all places. So, not a real high threat for today. In fact, if we look at CSU's outlook for today, they only highlight a little bit of tornado risk in eastern Colorado, pretty remote area really, and there's some hail risk out there too at 15%. And then the wind doesn't really show up very much for today. So Friday, we kind of take a little bit of a break. Now on Saturday, they have upgraded the outlook that was a slight risk to level 2 to a 3, which is the enhanced risk, level 3, and that's through extreme southern Nebraska, but covers a good chunk of central, northern, and western Kansas. The slight risk goes to Kansas City. The slight risk goes up to southeast Wyoming. Doesn't go as far west as Denver, but it does cover a little bit of eastern Colorado. And then the marginal risk does actually get into the Ozarks a little bit late on Saturday. There's a bigger threat on Sunday, however. Let's take a deeper dive into Saturday's outlook, though. The tornado risk is showing up like this: 5% chance of a tornado right along I-70 in Kansas and up into much of southern Nebraska. And then that hatched area there is the intensity level of 1 out of the 3 that the Storm Prediction Center talks about. So about a 1 in 5 chance of a tornado occurring in there being of an intensity of EF2 or higher, but only a 5% chance of any tornado occurring at all. So that's how you interpret that graph. Let's take a look at the severe wind risk. That is, we're getting into that season now, as you know from the last outbreak that started in Iowa. Wind with 95-mile-per-hour winds, that starts to become more of an issue as we get into June and July. Summer derechos, or just bowing segments of lines that can get pretty much out of hand. Well, of course, we had one in the Ozarks around Joplin just about a week ago. We had those intense winds. So that kind of proves that. But severe wind risk, again, is at its highest, 30% central Kansas into southern Nebraska. And then on the hail side of things, that can be a factor still this time of year, especially if you go into Colorado and Wyoming and more of the western part of the Great Plains. But you can see there 30% risk of that on Saturday as well. So Saturday, a day worth mentioning in Kansas, Nebraska, parts of Colorado. The CSU's outlook does put a tornado risk at 5% in that general same area, with the hail risk a little bit higher than the wind risk. They're tucked away into northwestern parts of Kansas and a small fraction of Nebraska and Colorado. Now, I wanted to go ahead and take a look at day 3 is from the Storm Prediction Center's perspective. That's Sunday, and this has been enhanced now. We have a level 1, or 2 out of 5 that stretches through all of the Ozarks up to St. Louis, southern Illinois. Of course, they had a lot of tornadoes this year, basically, so that's not good news for them. And then the upslope area, Kansas, up into Nebraska. Now, at day 3, they don't have a breakdown of storm type from the SPC, but we do have CSU's outlook, and that does indicate a 5% tornado risk across the Ozarks up to St. Louis, Columbia, Missouri included in that, with a 15% hail and wind risk more or less in that area, emphasizing maybe more Kansas, Missouri, and parts of northern Oklahoma. And as usual, the hail risk is, you can kind of tell by looking at that, it's a risk early on when the storms form, and then once they form and into the overnight hours, the wind risk is usually shifted more to the east and southeast as those thunderstorms progress and change their mode a little bit. So active weekend. That's all shown here in the supercell composite for June 19th through the 25th. So you can see that belt right there. It basically sums up what I just talked about for the next 3 days and possibly beyond. And then June 26th through July 2nd, still a lot of severe supercell risks up there. Highest percentage that this thing puts out for northern Missouri, northern Kansas, all the way up into the Dakotas, Minnesota. Still pretty active. And then as we go to July 3rd through the 9th, rather, we have that supercell composite showing up a little bit around Nebraska, but mostly up around the Dakotas and up into Minnesota.